Hi, welcome to the latest edition of the Wellbeing Show. I've got an American masquerading as an English person with the name of Julie Potiker joining us today, and who's got a resentment about Buddha, which we'll see if we can dig that out of her and find out what that is. I don't know. It seems deep and dark, so we may not be able to get there in the end. Julie's joining us from the East Coast, no, West Coast, San Diego, West Coast of US. So she's just woken up. She's not had enough coffee, so we're going to be very kind to her and treat her with kid gloves. Otherwise, we'll find out whether somebody can come through the computer screen and punch me in the nose or not. So I'm going to be very careful. Julie's a certified compassion coach, has a very interesting background in the arts and trained as a lawyer. So we'll get to know about her story. Just to remind folks that we record this as though it's live, but it's not live. When you see it, don't call me with questions, so I might be doing something else. So send me a WhatsApp 07506 319 745. And just for those that are in the UK, you'll see a strange thing called sunlight on me. That's what it is. We don't get it very often. I just want to let you know. It's that big yellow thing up in the sky. So enjoy it and wear sunscreen, people. Okay, that's the public health announcement over and done with. And Julie, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm waking up and I'm happy to be here.
It's propped up by many things, I hear.
Many things, or I'd
Thank,
be way too low in the seat.
thank you for sharing your morning with us. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I've been to San Diego. As I said, you're just outside of San Diego in California. California actually is one of my favorite places to go to. I go there quite often. In fact, I was there last year with my boy. We went to Disney in LA and then up to San Francisco. I was going to take San Diego, but he wanted to go back to Disney. So there you go.
Oh, well, next time you'll have to come down here. There's great attractions for kids
Yeah,
and
yeah.
adults.
San Diego is beautiful. Given the choice, and I'm going to choose my words carefully here, but I don't actually like Los Angeles, I have to
It's a
say.
nightmare up there. There's too many humans.
Yes, it's just too sprawling and big.
Primate
It's,
disaster.
I mean, Santa Monica, Santa Barbara, all of that,
Oh my
beautiful.
God, Santa Barbara's gorgeous.
And as you go up the coast there, it's really gorgeous. And then when you hit San Francisco, Malibu, of course, is drop dead. The Big Sur and all of that. But there's something about Los Angeles that if you could just jump over it. So San Diego and then either side of Los Angeles, it's great.
Exactly. I'm with you on that.
I
And I
just,
bet you most Los Angeleans would agree with you.
I don't know. I think one or two hit squads might be on the look for me. Sort of, the mayor of Los Angeles might be out for me now. But it's been
Meanwhile, I would rather be sitting in the theater in the West End, so we could just swap.
okay. That's a deal. Go on, high five on that one for sure. And so is San Diego where is California where you grew up? Is that your sort of home?
Nobody grows up here.
That's like London. Absolutely nobody grows up in London anymore. Do you know the story of how you know you're a proper Cockney?
How?
You're born within the sound of Bow Bells, which is the church, which is
Mm,
not far from it. It's like on a windy day, that was well, a wafting wind that wasn't too loud. I could probably just about hear the Bow Bells when they ring. But certainly I'm not a native Londoner. So you're not a native California. Yeah.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, okay. Whereabouts is that? Tell us the geographies. My geography of America is bad.
It's in the Midwest.
In the middle.
And you know what? They grow good, solid, kind people there.
Great, just like you.
Yeah, well, I came from there. I came from that soil.
Yeah. Whereabouts? I've been to because I drove across America and I went through the Midwest.
Wow.
No, it's just one it's something you got to do in your life at least once, right? Um
No,
America's amazing. I love it.
it is. It's gorgeous.
It really is.
If all the people weren't so messed up, it would be, it would
Yeah,
be,
there's
let's not even go
we
there.
could go there. The only place I didn't like, I mean, I think Los Angeles is okay. It's just a big city. It's not, there's no real
Yeah.
full hub to it. The only place I didn't genuinely disliked was Las Vegas. Just as soon as I got there, I didn't like it. I stayed at Bellagio and all that sort of stuff, supposed to be good, but
You know
just,
what's good about Las Vegas is
uh,
not Las Vegas. It's
uh,
the shows and the restaurants.
yes, yes, without a doubt. There was a great quality to all of those, so I enjoyed that. But it was a very strange experience of being somewhere that actually just was so
So
unreal.
manufactured,
It is
right?
really
Yeah.
manufactured. And it was quite disturbing, I found, for me emotionally. So you grew up
Oh, poor
in,
baby. Can I help you with that?
I've
You
got
were
some
so
help.
you were so
Got some help
disturbed.
with me. Got my transitional object just in case things get too
Oh,
scary.
okay.
Um, so you grew up in the Midwest. I guess we think of, is that the Bible Belt type stuff? Is that right?
Not really. It's a little north of the Bible Belt.
Okay.
Um, and my husband grew up in Michigan, in Detroit, the Detroit area.
Yeah.
And then we went to University of Michigan for college, and that's where we became boyfriend and girlfriend.
Right.
And that was in 1980 that we became boyfriend and girlfriend, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And still
And
boyfriend, girlfriend?
we
Or
lived in LA. He
right.
went to he went to law school in LA.
Right.
And I had this great job in Cleveland at a television station actually, and I didn't like it and I quit and I moved to LA, and then I was a cocktail waitress and a receptionist. I was just making my rent,
Cool. Cool.
and then I decided to go to law school, and so I left him in LA and I went to Washington D.C. So
Okay.
we were apart for 3 years. I don't know why we're talking about this, but it's funny.
Yeah. And did your family and stuff like that, were they farmers, or they're not lawyers, I guess, your family?
No, my mom and dad were, but my dad owned a business and my mom was vice president of a hospital.
Wow.
That was unusual because I was born in
Right.
1961, and I'm the youngest of three girls, women now, and she was bored. And my father said to her when I went to kindergarten, honey,
Run a hospital if you're bored.
you can't just keep having babies every time you're bored. But women didn't work back then. So she was a freelance writer and she applied for a job at a hospital and she ended up working her way up to the, executive suites, and she was the only woman there.
She would have been. Absolutely. Yeah.
All the other women were support staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So you can just imagine that interview. Why do you want the job? I'm not allowed to have any more babies.
and I mean, certainly she was allowed to, but
Good. It was a piece of legislation.
I so get it though.
Yeah.
I get the wanting more
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah. Were you aware growing up that that was quite unique? Your mum was was plowing a furrow.
I was so aware because everybody else's mom was home.
Yeah.
I mean, she was home for dinner every night. I frankly don't know how she had the energy to like make our Halloween costumes, do the Valentine's boxes, work full time. I mean, we had a woman at home, and my dad told me in his later years that back in those days, her salary was a wash because they were paying for somebody to be at the house when I got home from school and to get dinner on the table.
Yeah. That's a story many people are familiar with. The working just to pay the childcare bills.
Right. But it gave her an identity, and I see it because I stopped working to have my kids, and I think she really didn't respect that because
Mhm.
my sisters both continued to work.
Mhm.
And I can understand why she didn't respect it. Like she worked that hard so that we would have this role model, and then I went back to be a Stepford wife. How ridiculous. But I didn't become a Stepford wife, of course.
You don't
So
look like a Stepford wife. Not
my
how,
hair
it's really not how you're coming across to me. So
my hair wouldn't be so insane if I was a Stepford wife.
but if you were at one point, the drugs have worn off a long time ago. That's fine. And no lasting damage that I can see.
Oh
Uh,
God.
and were you proud of your mum, or did you just think she was weird, or did you just not notice because you were just caught up in your own stuff?
That's a really interesting question. No, I had a lot. I was really proud of her.
Well,
I was also really afraid of her because
sure.
she had an anger problem. So
Yeah.
so I had to, C's were not acceptable in this house, and
So
I had a complicated relationship with her.
yeah, well, one would have a complicated relationship to any parent who has anger issues.
Right, right, right.
That's going to be quite frightening because kids don't know how to deal with anger in parents.
Well, I didn't know. I called it my off switch. You're a therapist, so you would know that I was disassociating, but I didn't know that. And it was just a beautiful self-protection thing that my brain did for me
Yeah,
that when I was a kid, I didn't realize how smart my coping mechanism was. And then, of course, as an adult and a psych major in college, I worked through all that. But
yeah. But it is, I mean, you're right. It is extraordinary how the young mind can find strategies to deal with it. And one of the classic strategies is people get into fantasy, for example. That's why for a lot of kids, things like Tolkien, etc., are really, really amazing books because they can move away from the reality that they don't like. And I told you I was really drawn to theatre as a kid, and we've got a shared love of theatre. And for me, that world was where I could explore elements of myself and my life which weren't allowable at home because home was quite frightening. So, I get it. And I remember the disassociation. It was strange stuff, but it worked.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very effective until
yeah,
you get older, and then he stops being so effective, of course.
yeah.
But
I just remember one time my husband, when we were dating, losing his temper and yelling about something.
yeah,
And I just looked at him really calmly and I said, I can't hear you. I can't hear what you're saying until you talk in a normal tone of voice. I'm not going to be able to hear you.
yeah,
And he was like, wow.
yeah. Because that's literally what it is. It is switching off the stimulus, isn't it? Because it's just too much.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love myself.
Yeah. Great. Well, and when did you discover that it was called dissociation? Your sort of off switch.
Oh, I think it was probably in psych class in
Was it?
undergraduate school.
Mm. It sometimes has some really positive and useful things in later life. So, for example, when I was in my early days of my career, I still hadn't got treatment for some of the trauma stuff. And dissociation would still happen. So I worked with dangerous patients, of course. What else would you do? And when they kicked off, I was the one who stayed calm,
Exactly.
and I would just be
Now I
completely
know.
rational. Yeah,
Now I know. I mean, I used to go to the jail. I was in law school, third year of law school. They call it 3L in the US. I was in a clinical program where I had clients and they were all in jail. And I used to visit them in jail. So, but now that I'm teach mindful self-compassion, instead of disassociating, I can breathe in for myself and out for them. And I can stay rooted in my sit bones if I'm sitting or my feet if I'm standing. And I'm breathing in for myself and I'm breathing out for them in the background. The conversation's in the foreground, and I can really stay in my body.
yeah.
And it's better because I'm present.
Yeah, and it is interesting because that sort of observer position, which is what you're describing, which you get from mindfulness and from meditation and from Buddha. I know we're not supposed to talk about Buddha because it's a triggering subject, but I just sometimes it happens.
Oh my God, we would be such good friends.
Yeah, don't let's not. We're probably safer having been separated by continents and oceans because it would be quite worrying for people around us. But that sort of observer position, which you learn from meditation, is very different, as you say, from the shutdown or
Yeah,
the toning down, the disassociative
yeah,
state. And in the
yeah,
early days of the research, people were worried it was just another form of dissociation, but it's massively different.
yeah. Yeah, because you're actually physically present and you're taking care of your body while you're listening.
Yeah. So
I
we're going to get onto what that is, the technicalities of it, but I'd quite like to
Okay.
carry on with your story simply because, as we said at the beginning, I'm not trying to do EMDR with you. It's fine. You don't have to follow the fingers.
I'm doing it now with paddles. It's so
Are
fun.
you?
Yeah. It's so fun.
It's great. It's great. The pandemic gave us all sorts of benefits as
Yeah.
well as being really quite disturbing event. But in terms of our professions, we got creative, right? So just thinking, because the reason being that if I hadn't started talking to you about your childhood, we wouldn't have heard you disassociated.
Right.
And I think it's important people understand that and also I really love the way you describe it, and I really love the way you are using your compassionate approach to understand that you were, as a child, incredibly creative and loving, and that I know that you're using that compassion to look back on those experiences and tell yourself, well
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
And we
Well
need
done, well done, little sweetheart.
absolutely, absolutely. And so you're embodying the work, but I think it's really useful to hear your story as long as it's not too triggering for you. For other people who maybe, are upset by this, maybe you're in it, maybe you're a child, and you're afraid of mummy or daddy, they're frightening you, they're shouting at you. It's really important to understand that there's help out there. And in the UK, good organization to call if you're younger is Childline. If you're older and you still have these disturbing symptoms where you're checking out, as some people call it, and you're overly frightened and triggered by, say, your partners, if they shout at you, well, maybe even if they just growl at you a little bit, and it gives you sort of difficult feelings of wanting to hurt yourself or anything like that, which can often happen, right? I suggest that you give Samaritans a call in the UK. In the where you are there similar types of organizations, Julie, that people might
Oh,
reach out?
yeah, absolutely. I always think if you're a kid, you should talk to a trusted adult, and
Yeah,
it might not be your mom or your dad. It could be your teacher, it could be an aunt, but a trusted adult. And then, of course, sorry, of course, there's helplines. And if you're ever thinking of harming yourself, there's people to talk to 24/7 on helplines.
and we will put down details underneath the video so people can look at that. I would echo what you said about children. Find a trusted adult. The secret of life to sort of getting to where you have the help you need is to never stop asking for it until you get it.
Because you deserve it.
That's right. That's right. So here you are, this girl that has developed these amazing strategies, but you're still living a life, right? Even though you've had these challenges, what we'd call adverse childhood experiences. You've had those. You grow up, you become an adult, you get a boyfriend, and then you decide that you want to educate yourself and better yourself. And in some ways, I guess, follow your mum's path, although she didn't do education, but decide to forge a path for yourself.
Hmm.
And what was it, do you think, that attracted you to wanting to do law school? Because I mean, that's a really tough training. I mean,
Well,
that's like no easy thing to do.
so it's not easy, but if you don't have a learning difference, it's not really that hard.
Okay.
So I know that because my husband and all three of my kids have ADHD, so school is really a pain in the ass for
Yeah,
them.
yeah, 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 absolutely.
It's not that hard for me. I mean, it's a lot of time,
Yeah,
but I can make myself do it. Like my kids literally couldn't make themselves do stuff if
yeah,
they didn't want to do it.
yeah, yeah,
So, which is hard to understand when you have a neurodivergent mind, it's
yeah,
not like they're just being obstinate.
yeah.
They just really couldn't frickin' do it in
It's
some
well worth
instances.
it's well worth reinforcing that point because a lot of kids with ADHD in school get labeled as having bad behavior. They're not.
Right.
They're
No,
not. It's a part of the neurodivergence.
they
And also we
actually,
should say, for some kids the medication works, for some they don't. Some kids, even if when the medication works, they don't like using it because it changes how they view the world. And
right,
it's
right. And the can cause real sadness.
Yeah.
But they
Well,
actually need different kinds of schools,
yes. Oh, I
you
totally
know?
agree. Our education system, this is across the world. This is the truth. All schools across the world are failing kids with ADHD.
Right. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
getting
Coming
back
back
to
to you
law
though,
school,
we'll sort out
getting,
the education system for the world later.
yeah, getting
If
back to me,
just
it's all
shelve
about,
that one. Let's give that struggle to Buddha. He can sort that out. We will carry on the conversation if that's all right about
uh,
you. You've learned a lot about ADHD from your kids and husband. I can see you've
oh
got
my
that
God.
mind that you've learned how to go all over the place.
And they're so creative,
Yeah, yeah.
you
I've just
know?
done it. I'm gonna bring us back to you. So you
Yeah,
choose to go into law. What was it that
yeah.
attracted you?
I wanted the security of a paycheck and I wanted to make my parents proud. And I thought because I was such a theatrical kid and so comfortable on stage and I liked moot court, I actually thought that I'd be a trial lawyer and that way I could sort of merge my
Yes,
loves.
yes, yes, because there's formative elements.
But what ended up actually happening was I became a corporate lawyer and that was so boring. So boring. Oh my God, it was painfully boring.
Okay.
But it did give me a paycheck and security, and I wanted that.
But it would also rob you of your soul.
Exactly.
Is it worth it in the end? It's like they take that away. And incredibly long hours, I imagine, as well, and very
Yeah.
demanding, and people don't know this about lawyers in that context. You have to account for every minute, don't you? You have these little things you tick off. What did you do for that minute?
It's called billing.
Yeah, it's
And
just the first
I
lawyer
was
that showed me what they have to do. I was like, why? Why in God's name would you do a job where you have to have that
no,
level of accountability? It's
no,
just
I know.
tell me
I
about the
know.
theatre. We're going to have an ADHD way of talking. That's fine. Tell me about theatre and what you got involved with. You started in theatre very early, didn't you?
When I was 10, I started performing in shows. And then I went to this really cool camp called Interlaken, and it was in northern Michigan in the Upper Peninsula, and it's a campus, and they have from junior camp from little kids all the way through college. And they also have a boarding school there, which my parents wouldn't let me go to for high school because they wanted me home. But I got to go to Interlochen Arts Academy in the summers, and I was an operetta and choir major and a piano and dance minor, and it was just complete heaven.
Yeah, great. And did you pursue that as a career? Is that why you ended up in the West Coast in LA?
No, 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 no. As a matter of fact, my high school was heavy theater arts, and
Okay.
so we did a drama. We had trimesters, so instead of semesters, there were 3 times.
Yeah.
So in the first trimester, we did a drama. In winter time, we did the musical because all the sports kids were snowed out, so we could have enough humans to make a chorus to do a musical. And then in the spring, we did a comedy.
Hmm.
So I was always in all those shows. And then senior year, I left early. I came back for graduation, but I left early and I lived in Washington, D.C. in my sister's apartment. She was a law student. She let me live with her big kids, her friends. And I was in shows there, professional shows, and I did an internship at a theater and, did dance and movement. And it was there that I realized I don't want to be a drama teacher. And what if I don't make it on Broadway? I better go to college that's more open liberal arts, not get a theater conservatory. Because my mom took me to audition at all these colleges for their theater conservatories, and I got into a couple of them.
Hmm.
And then I panicked at the 11th hour, and my sister said, just apply to University of Michigan. She had gone to Northwestern. She said all her friends that went to Michigan, which is closer to home, you could drive there in 3 hours, loved it. It's a big school. So it was FedEx. It was the day of the deadline. I never even saw that school. I applied, I got in, I had good grades because I was afraid not to, right?
Yeah.
So I got in and I went. And so that was the break. Okay, I'm not going to be an actress.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting because some people just butt their head up against that wall for a long time, and then don't get it through. So I wondered, what did you get out of doing the arts? What do you think? Because obviously you were a kid who is having quite significant symptoms, if you want to call it that, the dissociation, stuff like that, so strong ACEs, which would have had an impact on your own internal voice, the way you thought about yourself. Did that factor in the choice around the working in the arts and engaging in the arts at school?
I'm trying to, can you ask that question again with different words? Because I'm trying to figure out what you're actually asking.
Okay, so one of the reasons I did theatre at school is it gave me a richer internal world. I was able to explore aspects of my own. I'm talking now as an adult looking back on it,
Yeah, yeah,
because I came from a home that was destabilizing and frightening. I would have these symptoms of dissociation and stuff like that. I couldn't deal with relationships very well. How could you? You know, all of our things. But then I could explore all sorts of social skills in
yeah.
the theatre,
Okay, I get it.
yeah.
So when I was showing up for rehearsal every day instead of for practice,
Mhm.
like all the sports kids, I was so happy. I was so happy.
Right.
And standing on that stage made me so happy. And right before the curtain, I would be sitting backstage, sort of like bent over, thinking, oh, I'm going to have diarrhea or I'm going to faint, like so afraid. And then I'd walk out on stage, and the first line would come out of my mouth, and it was brilliant feeling. And so now I'm a huge theater goer, right? And I sit in the seat and I have ecstasy. I have awe. Of course, I'm teleporting myself up onto that stage, into the body and into the shoes. I actually wrote a poem about it
Thank you.
of of whomever is up there. And I am up there. I'm in the seat and I'm up there at the same time. And it's just
After the show,
gorgeous.
we do the recording, I'm going to ask you to send me the poem, and then I'll
Sure.
put it underneath the show so that people can read it, because that would be beautiful for people to be able to pause the video and read the poem and see you
Cool.
supporting yourself on stage. I mean, I really identify. I was a different person on stage. It was first time I watched it on stage. I did that whole, you have the fear and anxiety, but you get out there and suddenly home, absolutely safe home. Yeah. It's really interesting all these aspects of your functioning, because I think that they probably inform your decision and the way you work as a compassionate coach, as a mindful compassionate coach. And we're going to get onto that now. So you have this period of time when you're stable in the corporate world. Is that when you had your kids and all that sort of stuff?
No, no. Well, yeah, I had one kid. I was practicing law in Detroit, actually, a suburb, Southfield. And then my husband's company that he worked for sold, and we became free to leave
Oh,
Michigan. And we hightailed it with our toddler to San Diego.
yeah.
And then once here, I wasn't practicing law anymore because I wasn't licensed here.
Okay.
I'm licensed in Michigan. That's how that works in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started doing volunteer work, and then I got pregnant with twins.
Okay. And then
And
you
then I went on bed
break.
rest.
Okay. So right. And that was
Ship ship down. Ship down.
did you enjoy being a mom, stay-at-home mom? Was that fun for you?
It was so fun until they turned about 12, and
Right.
then everything went sideways.
Okay.
And
Because
that's how I got into what I do now.
is that just things caught up with you that the childhood and all that sort of stuff and that self-talk, or just because they were getting their own lives and you couldn't focus on them?
Wow. Okay. Honest.
Go on, honest.
I was a very good mom
Yeah,
of early childhood.
yeah,
I was like the preschool teacher, the kindergarten teacher, the third grade teacher, coming up with all these fun things. And, I was really in it and on it. But when they started having difficulty, really the girls, not Michael, um, I was not well equipped.
yes,
And I got so stressed out, I thought I had a brain tumor
right,
because the wrong words were coming out of my mouth.
yeah,
And the neurologist that I went to for a complete workup said it's stress. And I didn't know what he was talking about. So I tooled up. He said, take mindfulness based stress reduction. I said, okay.
right, okay, right,
And then from that, because I like lifelong learning and blah, 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 I'm like, oh, brain science, that's fun. And
yeah,
so I started taking all the brain science classes. And then I found a mentor in Rick Hansen. Thank God he accepted me as a student and just loved me. And he's the one who gave me the bibliography of, read this, read this, read this, read this. And I just started taking trainings. And then I realized, ooh, people could actually get damaged from this. And I want to do no harm. So I started taking the trauma sensitive mindfulness teacher trainings. And then I was like, ooh, people keep dying. I think I'll become a grief educator, certified, you know what I mean? So I just kept adding stuff to the toolbox so that when people are in a room in front of me or on Zoom in front of me, my script that comes out of my mouth, which isn't a script because it's just coming out of my mouth, out of my head, is hopefully not going to be a cause for any distress in them.
sure, sure. Although people might have feelings.
Yeah. And then I know because I can look at them and I can see if they're like,
Yeah.
if they're checking out or if they're getting ramped up, I can see if they're hyper or hypo
So
and try to help.
thanks for your honesty about that, and I'm glad you were comfortable in sharing that. And it's a very familiar story. So you're nurturing these very young children, but as they become more independent and then they have complicated needs, one hits a brick wall, as it were. But now, what's interesting for me is that you chose to do something about it rather than go under.
Well, here's the thing. There was a movie. I don't know if I should say this. It was the Sunshine Cleaning Company. Anyway, the daughter's mother couldn't handle it, and they came home and found her. And then they were so understandably traumatized
Yeah.
that the only profession they could go into was cleaning up crime scenes. And so
Okay,
every
right, okay.
time, and so it was a black comedy.
Yeah.
And every time I thought about exiting because it was too painful, I thought, I can't do that to my kids.
Yeah, yeah. Great. I'm glad you didn't do that to
Me
yourself.
too. Me too, because I have a fantastic life.
Yeah. And again, if people are resonating with this and they feel that, the story of hurting yourself, first of all, just always understand that never make a permanent decision based upon feelings that will change.
Everything changes, the good
Every,
and the bad.
yeah, always. Change is the only permanent thing in life. And there's always help out there. We've put the numbers down there. We'll just check those numbers out. The most important thing, folks, is to talk to somebody about whatever that stuff is that's going on in your head. I promise you it gets better.
The thing is that we all of us humans,
Yeah.
have a bag of rocks
Yeah.
and we're carrying it. And sometimes it's sand and sometimes it's boulders. but we all have it. So the common humanity piece really helps you feel better and less isolated. So it helps you, it helps lift up the deep end of the pool, which is what we all need.
Yeah, that's really nice way of saying it, because that sort of solipsistic, I'm on my own and the only person this has happened to, is a really, really difficult track to get out of. It's not true. Never are those thoughts correct, and never are those feelings are correct. And you're right. It's and again, sort of thinking about Buddhist philosophy, the notion that life involves struggle. It does.
Right,
And it's
right,
something that all of us as human beings can identify with and say, yeah, I get that.
right,
I get
right.
it.
And somebody was actually my daughter yesterday said, everything happens for a reason. And I said, I don't think so. I said, I think shit happens.
Yeah.
And then we respond or react, skillfully or not.
Yeah.
And that is our power.
Yeah.
If we can get our prefrontal cortex online so that we can make a skillful response instead of a reaction that's, from our primitive brain. I do the Dan Siegel brain on my hand.
Yeah.
But, if we can get behind here online,
Yeah.
which you get the pause from having a meditation practice.
I love the Dan Siegel thing. Walk us through it. So the amygdala, blah, 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 and all that. Go on, Sean.
Right. And then, so your anger, your fear, your whatever it is that's instant that you feel coming up in your body or clenching your chest or your solar plexus, or you get a pain in your jaw or whatever it is, that's your amygdala. You're noticing, because you have a mindfulness practice, hello, that this is happening. And then you need a dozen seconds to get your prefrontal cortex online. So that's why I developed Snap, so that
Yeah.
it's a hack to give you the time as your body is calming down. So if you're doing soothing touch, which could be you're cradling your face, you could have your hands on your heart, or one on your belly and one on your heart, or both on your belly. You could be hugging your arms, whatever it is that's the mammalian caregiver response that works for you. Oh, that's oxytocin and endorphins coming down to help you calm down. And then you name the emotion, that's anger,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Couple more seconds, you're still calming down. And then the act is, what do I need to hear right now? Oh, Julie, sweetheart, actually, you're safe right now. Look around, you're talking to this cool British dude. You're on Zoom. Nobody's chasing you, right? And then the second part of the act is, what do I need to do right now to shift my mood? And that is your superpower, because you have a list of 35 things that you wrote down when you were feeling fine,
Yeah.
of all the things that bring you joy. And you choose what you can do in that moment. And you might have to choose 5 of them until you feel better. And then the P is praise. And for me, that's good job, sweetheart. And thank you, teachers. And thank you, practice. And thank you, universe. But if you were a religious person, it could be your deity, which folds you right into the gratitude practice, which, as everybody knows, is like the #1 for mental health and well-being. So
Well,
it's
gratitude is, yeah, that's the
Snap.
secret of life. So the letters in Snap refer to a process then.
Yeah, it's a method. It's I came up with it during COVID. It's you snap, soothing touch, name the emotion, act, and praise. And when I teach it in person in a group, I have people stand up, sit down, turn right, turn left, and
Right.
we yell out the emotions. And that, because I'm trying to do the neuro-linguistic programming so that it gets coded, so that it gets remembered. So
But
there's a
it's also,
method.
I
There's
mean,
a
I'm a real
method.
fan of embodied work as well. So
Yeah.
work that way you use your body, I think, is really powerful. And that comes from the theatre background, the drama therapy background, stuff like that, embodying the stuff. Because with myelination happens more, not just with the hormones that you're talking about, but it happens more if you've got a physical action. That's just the way it is.
Right.
Our
So
brains grow that way. Right.
my husband said when I did the book launch for Snap to push that practice out into the world, he said he felt like I was doing the hokey pokey, like making everybody in the room do the hokey pokey. And I said, awesome, because you remember the hokey pokey.
Exactly. And also it's a laugh. I mean, I can't tell you how important I think it is that any form of therapy or therapeutic endeavor, we have this sort of dominant vision, don't we, that therapy is dark, it's hard, it's miserable, and that really puts people off. But actually, modern psychology associated with these very ancient meditative practices
Mm-hmm.
can be really good fun and can be really quick
Yep.
and
Yep.
actually don't require you to talk about what happened in the past. It's about
No,
like,
no,
right here and
no.
now, I can manage this, right?
Right. And that's what I love because it gives the person the power in their own selves. And then you feel better and you're like, yay, I could do that for myself. I can parent myself. I can love myself. I'm awesome.
And also they can show other people as well. I love that stuff. It's like practical skills that people can then do peer-to-peer support with.
Right.
I think are invaluable because, and we were talking about this before the show, there are certain types of practitioners who like to make it all very mysterious,
Yeah.
complicated words, and
Yeah.
it just happens to be quite useful in terms of charging a lot of people money if they don't understand, right? Just
Yeah.
accidental that it goes that way. I don't know why, but there you go. That was me doing my Donald Trump. I don't know why.
We have to go to the theater together.
No, we'd get thrown out, definitely. And
No,
direct.
I'm really respectful sitting in that chair,
Yeah, well,
teleporting.
you can do it for both of us then. Because
Okay.
I get thrown out of yoga classes, literally, because I start having fun.
That's funny.
My local yoga center pulled me into the office one day and had to tell me to calm down.
That's so great. That's so great.
I love
Live
it.
out loud.
The yoga teachers love it, but some people who they explained it to me. Some people know have a little bit of sensitivity to noise.
Some people.
Some people, that's it. So I have to be sensitive to people who have a sensitivity to noise. Okay.
Some people.
Oh, anyway, so that's that. Then there was another book that you wrote. Is
Oh, so my first book what is a it's a mindful self-compassion memoir.
that the one
So
Being
it's
Seen by Buddha?
yeah, it's this one. It's I'm a sailor, so that's why there's a sailboat on there.
Yeah.
That's just a I bought that from Getty Image,
Yeah.
but that book I hadn't invented Snap yet. So it's the pretty straight mindful self-compassion curriculum following stories. So it's memoir stories. So there's stories from my life, there's stories from my family's life, from some of my students' lives. Just between you and me, some of the kids in there are actually my kids with the name changed.
Mom, Mom,
Yeah, I got
don't
approval
post
for
another photo of me on Facebook.
I
Okay,
got a
I'll just write about you in my book.
I got approval
International bestseller.
for I got approval for the stories that are in there where I say that it is them. They did approve, and then years later
Not
regretted the
this true.
approval.
Okay.
And the books,
You
both
got the
books are on
approval.
Audible.
Did you get the approval pre-birth? You sort of got them to sign a contract before they'd even been born. There we go. Look, they agreed.
I actually, honestly, they had it coming, some of these things. But anyway, the audio book,
Embarrassing our children is the right of every parent. For the hell they put us through, we have
I
to.
know they didn't I know they didn't ask to be born, but anyhow, the audiobook
Yeah.
of Life Falls Apart is a little different than the print version because I my son
Yeah.
asked me to change some stuff, so I did.
Okay. All right. You actually listen to your children. How strange. So, mindful self-compassion then is a mixture of psychology and mindful practice. So,
Yeah.
explain to me self-compassion.
So Kristen Neff and Chris Germer. She's at University of Texas at Austin. He's at Harvard. She's a self-compassion researcher and came up with the self-compassion scale and quiz, and then the two of them together in 2010 came up with this curriculum, and it's built on the mindfulness-based stress reduction 8-week platform, but it adds in im, implicit no explicitly self-compassion. So the three pillars of mindful self-compassion are mindfulness, which is like MBSR, self-kindness, and common humanity.
Okay.
And then they have exercises that go through. And then because I'm the kind of person I am, I took all these other trainings and I synthesized them so that people get like the greatest hits. And I'll say, this is from Internal Family Systems, Dr. Schwartz. This is from Brene Brown. This is from Dan Siegel. This is from Rick Hansen. This is from Chris and Kristen. This is from me.
Yeah.
So I'm always giving credit where credit is due, but people are getting kind of like the greatest hits
Right.
of
So
healing themselves.
tell me about the two pillars that we don't already know about. We all know about mindfulness, I hope, but those other two pillars, explain those to me if you don't mind.
Well, so self-kindness is treating yourself like you would treat a dear friend. That's the
Yeah.
easiest way to say it. It's
Yeah.
really, really being nice to yourself. And there's exercises to learn how to even hear your compassionate voice because people have such critical, harsh inner critics.
Yeah.
So there's exercises to talk people in writing through how to get to their compassionate voice if they never heard it. And that's imagining their dearest friend struggling with an issue and how they would talk to that person.
Beautiful.
And then eventually you internalize and integrate that voice. And I think it helps to call yourself a term of endearment. Like I started calling myself sweetheart and it made me laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For years, it made me laugh. And I'm like, okay, the laughing helps. And now I call myself sweetheart and I mean it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm just so dear to myself because I deserve it.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other pillar?
Common humanity. And that we touched on just briefly, that's a big deal. Because if you imagine there's what, 7.5 billion of us primates walking the planet?
Yeah.
If you imagine when you have a core emotion, need to be seen, need to be heard, need to be loved, and you're having a weakness because there's an opening there and something's not being filled, and so an emotion comes out that's anger or fear or anxiety or despair or whatever it is, and you imagine that 1 billion people are feeling that same thing at that instant.
Yeah.
That's if you can actually get that from your head into your body, the knowing of that,
Yeah.
they call it a felt sense, which I always thought was like, what's that? But eventually you get this feeling like, wow, I'm really not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not alone with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't tell you how important it is to break down that solipsism, that isolation, that emotional terminal uniqueness thing. And that sort of, I mean, there's lots of ways of describing it. In drama, there's a woman who describes it as dropping into the universal. What is the universal human experience here? And that is such wisdom. If we can find a way of connecting to, and people can put it into complicated spiritual terms if they want, it's up to them, but it is very much a felt sense. There's also some interesting work that's happening around. There's maybe another sort of scientific reality to it in terms of how humans communicate in a transpersonal way, but let's not get too weird about it just yet.
Well, so Noel, we are mirroring each other's neurons
Mirror
right now.
neurons right now. Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Because we can't not, because we have energy bodies, and that's all science. I don't teach anything that's not science.
Absolutely. Look, we're running out of time. I told you we'd run out of time, particularly as we have similar personalities and we just have a laugh. The getting to the point of having a laugh, though, in life from a childhood which was not fun is a real achievement and something that people should be applauded for. It's not something to undermine. That if you can, and that movement from, and that thing that you said about initially when I was being nice to myself, I just laughed.
Yeah,
That's better than being not nice to yourself.
bingo.
And then the next step comes, yeah, because I am nice. And for a lot of people who have had insecure attachment processes in childhood or ACEs in childhood, they don't really understand that that's the norm. If you have a secure attachment childhood, you automatically internalize the sense of I'm all right.
Mm-hmm.
That's just that's your God-given right, if you believe in God. That's your right as a child, is to feel I'm good enough just as me. I'm good enough just because I breathe. I don't need to be anything. I exist, and therefore I'm beautiful and perfect, which
Mm-hmm.
is where we need to start from
Mm-hmm.
in life. And then you
But
go from there, right?
but it's beautiful that we can reparent ourselves as adults and get there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more than possible. And there are so many different routes as well these days. I mean, I think there's a real wonderful proliferation of evidence-based approaches, and there isn't one size fits all. And that's why I say to people, never stop asking for the help. Even if you
Yeah.
go, like you may go to a cognitive behavioral therapist, another evidence-based approach, and it doesn't work for you. But don't hear from that you can't be worked with. It just didn't work for you. Try something else that's evidence-based like this.
And it might just be the month or the year
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
you weren't ready for it for whatever reason.
absolutely. Absolutely. Or you just didn't get on with the person offering it to you. Sorry.
Oh, that's huge.
There's plenty of people offering it, so go and find somebody you do like. That we are sort of at the end of the show. So first of all, what are the things? So you've got the two books. Any other books apart from that?
I'm writing a poetry book now. I have so many poems. I started becoming a
Wonderful.
poet and getting published. So now I have a dear famous poet that is helping me as my book coach
Great.
marshal these poems into a book. I'm so excited. But what I want people to do, Noel, is to know that on my website, it's a library and it's free in there.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So
Tell us your
there's
website URL.
it's Mindful Methods for Life, and the four is FOR. It's written out.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
mindfulmethodsforlife.com, and there's a podcast in there that's free that's just guided meditations with a poem at the end of each one.
Wonderful.
I really recommend people put the if they can handle my Yankee accent, they put the earbuds in and they just listen and just take the time once a day. It's free.
Yeah. Oh, and that's wonderful. What an offer. I'm going to call you Dougal Dandy from now on, Miss Yankee. You need to get yourself a feather in your cap. At the very least, next time I see you, if you come
I wasn't
tell
I
us.
wasn't born on the 4th of July.
Oh, actually, we're just about to be born on the 4th of July in the UK. We've got our general election coming up on that day. I don't know why he chose that day. It's ridiculous.
It's
So
ridiculous.
absolutely ridiculous. That's
We
the
need to
American
have
holiday.
we need to have a whole nother hour where we just talk about politics and how bananas it is.
Well, I'd like to do that actually. So do come back and we'll talk about it. Because I do think there's, as people who are psychologically aware, involved in healing and humanity, we have something important to say about those things. We really do.
Exactly.
And about
And
the state of the world.
and how to calm down when you can't control it.
Yeah, exactly. There's sort of defensive strategies in the face of what it seems indefensible. There you go. I've given you a title for another book. Um, you're running workshops with people. You provide one-to-one stuff, all that as well, or not?
I pretty much offer freely what I do because it's part of my spiritual practice. So I teach a class every Wednesday morning that I've been doing since the lockdown on Zoom, and I teach workshops and I go to nonprofits and I teach their staff.
Super.
I just, I mean, I I'm not in this for the bucks.
Okay. So all of that will be on your website and people can check that out and get in touch with you. All right, we have to leave it there. You stay there. We didn't get on to your resentment about Buddha, but maybe the next show we can figure that one out and sort it out. It's only been 20
Don't
minutes.
don't call it resentment.
You got a resentment with me now. I chose the
Yeah.
wrong word. There you go. There you go. I'm done for. Better run it before she gets at me. Um, Julie, lovely to have you on. Thanks for your personality, who you are. Thanks for sharing your story and the resources, the wonderful work they do. It's super, really fantastic stuff. You stay there. Folks, I hope you really enjoyed it. If you've got questions, do WhatsApp them to me. My number's underneath, and then I'll pass them on to Julie. I'm sure she'll be delighted to answer your questions. Been real sort of it's a great way for me to end my week. It's Friday afternoon where I am, and it's a lovely end to my week. Beautiful beginning to my weekend. Wish you all a great evening after you've watched this and are inspired to pursue your own journey of growth and healing. It's always a good task to engage with. And I'll see you at the next show. But I want to say goodbye for now. And thanks so much, Julie, for being here.
Thank you.